welcome to P&W Gorilla Car Rants episode 1. So, I am currently driving from my house to my warehouse, and I felt like making a rant video. Why? Because why not? I don't know. Anyway, so today I'm just going to be mulling over random thoughts while I drive from point A to point B, and if you would like to listen, tune in. Also, I sell military surplus if somehow you missed out on that memo. That's the ad. That's all you get. Unless I do another one later, which I might. Anyway, so today I was thinking about, I don't know, like with myself personally, I find it fascinating that I ask as many questions as I do, and I am as critical as I am of so many various topics. And I guess the question that I have is, why aren't more people being more critical of so many topics? And I'm gonna just be just extremely general and extremely vague here, because honestly, I mean, if I started getting into every single topic that I have an issue with, I mean, we'd be here all day. So, general topics, so much discourse going on in the world currently, political climate, geopolitics, even just motivation, general, like, self-governing rights, your ability to be autonomous as a human being. Man, we could even start going into, a little bit about the AI surveillance grid, police state, just the U.S. government. There's so much to talk about. And I guess my question now is that, why aren't more people critical? Why are so many people complacent? Why are so many people just okay to, I don't know, go along with the status quo? I keep trying to find reasons for it. And I guess the question is, do I need a reason? Do I have to find a reason? Is it more than needing a reason? I mean, is it even something that you could have a solution to? Is it the human condition, right? Has this been the way of man for all of human history? Has man always been, where the vast majority, like 97%, 95% of a populace will just go along with, whatever's happening, and then it's only a very few amount of men that will actually, say that something's wrong and talk about it. I mean, a lot of people will talk about it, sure, but we'll do something about it. And obviously, there's not a whole lot of men around us that are doing something. But then again, you have to look into the last 100 years of America, right? And how America has quite literally been, I don't know, Theo Vaughn said it recently, that America has become like a shell company, like an LLC, right, to be used at its will. And how many of our leaders, how many of our fathers, how many of our grandfathers, died that should have been in America, protecting and leading the next generation? We don't have that. Our fathers and our fathers' fathers and our fathers' fathers' fathers, they, and even, back, I'm going to go back to, probably World War I. I mean, you can take it back to 1913. I guess technically you could really take it back farther, but I'd say 1913 is probably where things start really, really declining around here. And, look at how many men in Europe and in America, how many men lost their lives for forever wars, right? For world wars. How many of men that should have been our leaders, that should have been that were the strongest and the best of all of us, and they are no more, and we are quite literally what's left. And then that gets me thinking of, how many issues did we have where our grandfathers weren't taught so many things because their fathers died in a war. Our great grandfathers that because you know how many stories you hear of men going off to fight and die, and they had children back home, and it's like, well, where were the men then to raise those little boys? I was like, no, they were raised by women. So you have entire generations of men that were mostly raised by women. And that's not to say that, women can't raise children. Absolutely they can. But where do you think this society would be? Where do you think America would be? Where do you think Europe would be if we hadn't have had those wars? How do you think America would look if in 1913, maybe there's some huge pivotal shift? I made a Twitter post about this, I don't know how long ago, but if there was some huge pivotal shift and we just never went to any of these wars, right? How many more good men do you think we'd still have around, and how do you think America would look now? How do you think Europe would look now? And it's just something that I like to ponder on. Not that I believe by any stretch of the imagination that we can go back in time and, change anything, or, so maybe hypotheticals are stupid and a waste of time. But I do like hypotheticals in the way of, it really gets your brain jogging of thinking about the ways things could have been. And then thinking about, because of the way things could have been, looking at how they are now and starting to be more critical on how things are now because of looking back on how things could have been. But once again, that's just the way that I'm thinking on it, and I could be absolutely retarded, which has been my motto for a while, but nonetheless. So yeah, going back into it, there's so many things in the Western world that I wonder how things would have been if we wouldn't have had these forever wars, right? And then people are like, oh, well, there would be so many people in the U.S. and there would be so many more people. It's like, well, not necessarily. I mean, look how many illegals have come to America and have come to Europe in the last couple of decades, right? Ever since the Hart-Celler Act was repealed in 1965, I believe it was 1965. The Hart-Celler Act was repealed. Now in Europe, I don't know. I believe they started opening up immigration almost directly after World War II. I will be completely honest. I'm not well educated there, but I know that 1965 was really where things started getting bad for America, and we started seeing more multiculturalism and diversity, and therefore, all the problems that come with it. But I do sit back and I wonder and I ponder how things would have looked, how things would have been if we would have never had World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Korea War, and then, all of the forever wars in the Middle East, every single country that we've been affiliated with and gone to war with, which is, feels like at this point, it's just the vast majority of the Middle East. Yeah, and at the same rate, I also do realize that, wars have been existing since, for all of human history, right? There's always been war. There's never been a time in human history that we're really aware of, or I'm aware of, where there was full-on peace throughout the entirety of the world. That someone's always at war with someone's always mad at someone's always trying to fight someone. And comedically, it seems to be more often than not of countries fighting the countries that are around them. There's always border wars, and that even goes back to, when you look back to Viking times, you look back to the Native Americans, right? It was always it was always wars, border wars over land. And I think that's more than likely what we're seeing in the Middle East right now, is that it's just straight up border wars over land again, and countries wanting a bigger piece of the pie, and countries wanting to expand. And that's probably just, the way that's probably the human condition. Now, the way that some people are going about it, not favorable, I don't like that. But then again, I'm not in control, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it. I'm one dude. Almost used a racial slur there, but I'm one dude. So, my power right now is selling military surplus and then bitching, whining, complaining on social media. Or at least that's, the most useful thing that I've found that I can do, and that's what I'm going to continue doing. At least it's better than being silent. At least that's the way I rationalize it. But anyway, back into the meat and the potatoes of the rant. I really like saying meat and potatoes lately. I don't know why, but yeah, it's things I ponder on, right? Is that I wonder, and even in my own family, it's like I wonder how things would have been if my great grandfather would have been a stronger man, would have guided his family better, and this can be said for not just me, but man, I have some stories from some of my friends of their family relations and things that their grandparents did to their parents, of just screwing them over, and not wanting to share land, selling off the family land for an easier life in the city, and trying to split up the family as much as possible, and the psyop of, and I believe it's a psyop, I firmly do, and I fell into it too, so I have personal experience of it, but the turning 18 and moving out of the house immediately, man, I think that's some bullshit. Now, that being said, I have friends that are that know people like this as well, that they're in their 20s and their 30s, and they still live with mom and dad, and it's not like they're living with mom and dad in like a positive way. It's like they're bums that live off mommy and daddy's paychecks, and they play video games all day, and it's millennials that are playing video games all day, and it's Gen Xers that are allowing it. And so, which is fascinating, because I started realizing it. I started doing like the math a little bit more and more on like the age bracket between Gen Xers and Boomers, and I think that Boomers, they fucked over all the generations under them with land, right? I think that they fucked them over the worst with land. Boomers, they sold off the family farm, they sold off all the family land, and they wanted an easier life, and they split up the families, right? And that's where a lot of that died there. And then the Gen Xers, they got neglected by the Boomers in a lot of ways, and they got kind of adopted into that pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and they got a little bit of the golden age from Boomers, but they definitely got neglected. But like in a different way. And then the Gen Xers, right? They were a lot of the ones that lived through the 80s, and the Boomers, they're partying in the 60s and in the 70s, if my math is correct. And then the Gen Xers, they're the live free and partying of the 80s. And then, they had the Gen Xers, they had the millennials, and then the Gen Xers, they had the partying of the 80s and whatnot, and then all the free love and bullshit from the Boomers, came down to the Gen Xers. The Gen Xers and the Boomers were, and that's a funny thing too, is that so many of them try to play off like they're modest, and so many of them were partying and free love, and Woodstock, and man, there's so many drugs. There was so much drugs at that time period. And obviously it's not all of them. And I have to generalize, because, why wouldn't you generalize? I don't have exact statistics, and I don't have, spreadsheets and numbers. I'm generalizing. But I think that the Gen Xers, they really, really fucked over the millennials. In a lot of fucking ways, the Gen Xers really fucked over the millennials. And I think that the way the Gen Xers fucked over the millennials actually was like an opposite of they were like too loving, And Gen Xers were trying to be millennials' friends when millennials needed parents. And I don't know if it was just the boomers being too harsh, because they are the whole like pull yourself up by your bootstraps and how you kids just need to work harder, and you hear a lot of that from the boomers, right? So it would make sense that the boomers were really hardcore into the boomers were like, you guys need to pull yourself by your bootstraps. And then so since the boomers were so harsh, then the Gen Xers, they tried to be as, I don't want to say loving, but like maybe like standoffish. That's how it felt. Like they wanted to be friends with the millennials. And I've heard so many stories of that, but even at the same rate, it's like the Gen Xers were just weak. They were just unfathomably weak, especially the men, especially the suburban Gen X men. I know so many Gen X suburban men that are pathetically weak. They worked 9-to-5 office jobs, and they were yelled at constantly as kids. And I personally know men like this, and they're just pathetically fucking weak. They are providers. They're not protectors. Once again, I'm generalizing. I'm not saying about everyone. I'm saying that I know men like this, and I've met men like this, and it's painful to be around because they're now in their 50s. So I mean they're so stuck in their ways, and what's hilarious is that you have so many millennials and then Zoomers that were raised by these like ridiculously weak Gen Xers. So the millennials and the Zoomers, they went one of two ways. They also became unfathomably weak and soft, or there was so much resentment for their weak parents that they started training hard as fuck, that they became everything that they hated, or the weakness that they hated. They became the strength that they lacked. And you see this a lot with, and I believe this is mostly millennial like women and Zoomer women, but you're noticing a lot of them are really getting into like fitness, and a lot of them are trying to become like the fit muscular mommies and all that, as much as we joke about it. But they're trying to become what they lacked. They lacked masculinity while they're growing up. So, and I've heard women say this too. I've heard women that lift say this, is that they didn't have a strong man around, so they became the strong man. And this is probably the same fucking thing with the whole, how many men have become so fucking lonely, the whole OnlyFans thing and the porn addictions, and men have become so lonely. And it's the same thing where and I know you guys have seen it too in the last 10 years or so. It feels like the LGBT thing is just exploded, and like there's the joke of the can't find a girlfriend, become the girlfriend. And I don't know if there's any truth to that at all. I don't know if that's maybe that's like a silent or a loud minority, right? And that could be the same thing with the women that lift, and that could just be like a loud minority. I genuinely don't know. Once again, I'm just ranting off of things that I see on the internet, some things that I've seen in real life. But yeah, man, overall, I'd say that one of my biggest complaints about so much going on right now is just that people are scared to talk about it. And that's what's frustrating to me. And it could be even so much not just that people are scared to talk about it. It could also be that people are so tired and so run down in their own lives and their own 9-to-5s that they're so tired that they don't even want to talk about it. By the time they get home, all they want to do is, make like the cheapest meal possible, maybe a banquet meal, maybe like a Lunchable or some shit, like some microwave freezer burritos. Maybe you grab some fast food on the way home. You got home from your shit ass job and you sit down watch some sports ball and eat your trash food. And you know, maybe that's enough for you. Maybe that's a life that you're okay living. That's not something I want to fucking do. I could not fathom that at all. I believe that the biggest wealth a man could ever have is not only his free time, but also his own body's personal flexibility and mobility. I would say that that those two things are probably, like, as you age, as you get older, the biggest wealth that you can flex is, I would probably say, like, with yourself, right? I would say it's less money. I mean, sure, money's absolutely a flex. Money will always be a flex. But I would say that one of the huge flexes is going to be, you know, your own body's mobility and your dexterity. You know, strength, absolutely. Your general conditioning. So your own body as you age, that's going to be wealth. Your own free time. And then I would say your loved ones that you can call and will be at your house, you know, within an hour. I'd say that is massive wealth right there. Is having people around you that you can call, that you can text, that you could just show up at their house, and not just as like a, you know, shit hits the fan security thing, but as just camaraderie, as general, I don't know, sanity. You know, I ranted about this in my last video. I firmly believe that one of the most important things that you can have is friendship, is community, is camaraderie. And you know what? I'm just going to keep preaching about all these things, and I'm going to keep bitching about all these things, and yada, yada, yada. All right, guys, I'm about at the warehouse. I hope y'all enjoyed my driving rant. And yeah, buy some heckin' military surplus. And I'll talk to y'all on the next one. All right, ATS, peace.